I wanted to do a quick lesson on creating your own brushes in Photoshop. Now, I have talked in previous lessons about using the brushes available in Photoshop and adjusting those using the brush settings and making various different effects and adding multiple colors and textures and all of that. But you can actually create your very own brush if you want to be able to have a very specific texture or maybe a little bit more realistic looking texture, like for example with wood grain. So I'm going to show you this. It's very simple. Open up a file here, one that I found on the internet somewhere. And so you can see it's a, kind of a basic wood plank floor here. So what I'm going to do is use my selection tool, my rectangular marquee. I'm going to pick one that has a pretty distinctive wood grain so we can see this really clearly. And I'm just going to make a selection around that. Now, in order for this to work better, I'm going to boost the contrast within that just a tad. So I'm going to go up to the levels and I want to make my dark pixels a little bit darker and my light pixels a little bit lighter here. That's just going to help this texture show up more. So once you have that selection made, you have the contrast boosted. It's as simple as going to Edit, Define Brush Preset, and naming it, I've already done this a couple times, so I'm going to change it to Wood Plank 3. And once you have done that, you can see on the screen here that it has created a brush. I'm actually on the brush tool, and so there's my brush. And if I go to my brushes, it's already selected down here. So if we go into a new file then, depending on which color you have chosen, it's going to use that color as a basis for the texture. So if I just click, right there you can see the amount of texture. My opacity was down pretty low, so let's bump that up and we'll see it even better. So you can create really nice textures on really any drawing using this. Now if I used it like a paintbrush and clicked and drag, that's not going to work so well, but I can literally click once and change that. If for some reason I wanted it to be a little bit bigger, it's really as a matter of selecting it, because again, it's really just pixels on the screen. And if I go to Edit, Transform, Scale, I can use the Transform tool, and if you hold the Shift key down, you can transform it, not constraining proportions. You can make it smaller and larger. Just, really you can affect it exactly the way you want it to be. And when you get the size you want, you say OK, and you're good to go. So you can create lots of different textures. Now, wood, if you're doing something that has wood planks in it, obviously you're going to want to do more than one texture, but you can create as many different brush shapes and sizes that you could possibly want. So you can go in and overlay that on top of some other texture. So for example, I have this door here that, we created kind of a faux dry brush texture on here. I could actually add a wood texture on top of that if I wanted to. Let's find a better color. Maybe something in the brown range here. Maybe something like that. And I've got got it on a new layer so that I can adjust it as necessary. But you can go in and add a pretty convincing looking texture on there. Now, if I want to do that vertical or that horizontal piece, it's as simple as going into my brush settings, going to my brush tip shape here, and I can change that angle to 90 degrees, and look what happens to my brush now. So now it's sideways, and I can add that. Now, I could do a little bit better of a selection by cutting off those corners there, but just in this quick demo to show you what the possibilities are, I just wanted to do that really fast. And again, go back to a 0 degree, back to your original, and add that texture right in there. And right away, again, you have a much more convincing wood texture. And alternatively, I don't need to use an image per se to create a brush. I can actually create my own texture using the different brushes. So let's say I wanted to create a cloud texture, for example. I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer and create a new one. And I'm going to call this cloud. And instead of my wood plank, I just want to find a nice sort of soft, airbrushy kind of brush here. Let's make the size just a little bit bigger. Ooh, get rid of that. I'm going to drop my opacity down just a tad, find a little bit more appropriate color in here. Change the flow down just a little bit. And if you start to paint on here, now I'm using a pen tablet, and if I was not using the pen tablet, here's using the trackpad, it just keeps that circular shape. So I'll just keep using the trackpad, because if you don't have a pen tablet, it might get confusing. And you can change the color a little bit, so you can get some of those highlights and shadows built into it. You can create your cloud whatever shape you want. I mean, keep it sort of in the general cloud sense, color-wise, shape-wise. You can even add in sort of a background. Now, you could also go find an image or take a picture of the sky if you see some clouds that you like, and create the brush preset exactly like that as well. But this is just one way you can create your own shapes and turn it into a brush. Kind of a little bit of a shade color built into it. Because, clouds have dimension. Make it a little bit smaller. If you don't like something, you can always go back and erase it. Change your flow, change your opacity so you get a little bit less. And again, that's a little bit intense. Let's just soften it out a little bit. Take your time, get the shape the way you want. I'm doing this fairly quickly, so it's maybe not exactly ideal for a cloud shape, but it will work for demo purposes here. And then once you have that selected, now I've noticed I put this on its own layer, and I did that so that I could go to my selection drop-down box, choose load selection, and choose this cloud transparency. And that's going to select all of the cloud pixels that are on the layer there. And if I go to here, define brush preset, we'll call this cloud 01, and say OK. And if I'm outside of the selection, so let's turn this layer off, create a new layer, deselect, so that you can see this happen. And because I have the opacity turned way down, and by changing the size, adjusting the size here and there, you can create some different shapes. If you go into your brush presets, you can edit these brushes in exactly the same way. So let's bump up the size jitter. You might even let it angle itself just a little bit. We don't want it to angle too much in there. Let me select all and delete. Bring my size back up here. But as you sort of paint with it, you can see how it changes direction. And if I was doing this, if I filled this in with maybe a blue, like an actual sky color here. Fill with my foreground color, and then changed my color of my cloud to more of a white, and then started creating that. You can get some, pretty interesting results with that. And that's just one single brush. You can make as many brushes as you wanted and different sizes and shapes, and it looks like a fairly realistic looking sky, if I do say so.